Hello everyone, Steve Angel with Traditional Outdoors, and this is our next video in our scouting and deer hunting series that we're working on. And in this video, I'm going to be focused on some additional websites that I use in conjunction with CalTopo. I covered CalTopo first because it's generally the first one I go to, but all of these websites I'm going to get into today are very good resources. Some of them I use more than others, and I'll explain that as I go through them. And again, keep in mind that we're building a base here, and we'll be getting into more detail as we go. So not going to go into a lot of detail on these sites, but just enough to give you the information so that you can get out there and start using these websites and learning them for yourself. And then we'll be building on the complexity and how we use these or how I use these interactively in my scouting process. So without spending too much time chatting about that, let's just go ahead and start getting into them. So the next tool that I really use a lot is the National Geologic Map Database. And this is, well, it's just a really cool tool because I can actually go and download U.S. Geological Survey quadrangle maps for anywhere in North America or in the continental U.S. And there's a lot of things I can do with those, and I'm going to touch on those really quickly, so please bear with me. So once you're at the main site, you can click on the topo view, and then over here you'll see download maps. And this is really the really good part of this website. You'll take a few minutes for that little banner to go away, and then you can see you've got the continental U.S. outline. So what I can do here is I can drill into maps anywhere in the continental U.S. And view U.S. Geological Survey maps from any of these states. Real briefly, over here on the right side, I want to go through some of this. So the search bar, you can search by location. So I could do a search by, say, Sheridan, Wyoming, since I'm heading there in a couple of weeks. And now you can click on this and it'll carry you straight to Sheridan, Wyoming, and you'll see a shaded outline. This is actually a map. If I clicked on this, I could do things with it, and you can see it over here on the right side, but we'll get into that in just a second. I can also search by coordinates. Now, I've already cut and pasted a set of GPS coordinates for a trailhead that I've saved for my mule deer hunt coming up in a couple weeks, and that's where the trailhead is. So you can search by location, you can search by GPS coordinates, and it'll carry you right to the map. You can also just click around and then zoom in. Same thing, but if you're wanting to get somewhere really quick, you can do a search, and it works very well. Beneath that, you'll see a little slider bar here, and that is a year range, so from 1880 to 2010. I have yet to see a map at 1880. I don't know why it goes that low. I've also yet to see one that was updated in 2010, so I'm thinking this is just for future searches. Most of them are going to be in the early 90s, but if you want to narrow that date range, you can just by adjusting the slider. I just leave this at the defaults. The next row down is actually pretty important. So you'll see that all is selected, and what these numbers are as we hover over them, if you're not familiar with topographical maps, this is the detail level. So 250K, 100K, 63, 48, and 24K. Just think of it this way. The higher the number, the larger the area the map will cover, but with lesser detail. And on the other end of the scale, just the opposite. The lower the number, so 24K would be more detail, but it would be a much smaller area. I tend to use 24K for almost everything I do. And you'll notice when I click 24K, all these squares filled in. And this is actually a quadrangle map, USGS quadrangle map, and these are the map names. And you'll see up here on this search bar, you've also got a map name. So if I wanted to do a search for a map, because I already knew the name, we'll see we've got Gilmore Hill down here. If I go in here and do Gilmore Hill, it should take me to that Gilmore Hill quad, which we were just looking at. Now, you'll also notice that by doing this, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 maps with that Gilmore Hill name in it. And you'll see this quite a bit, so you might have to narrow that search down to get to a very specific map. And we're also going to cover a little bit more about these adjacent maps here in just a bit as well. So that covers the date and the size of the maps. And again, I almost always go with 24K maps. So let's find something that's got a little bit of detail in it here, and we'll come over here and we'll select. That looks like a good one. So you see that I've selected a quadrant because I've got 24K selected. It chose a 24 quadrangle map. And then over here on the side, you can see I've got a map that was available in 1987, and then I've got 1991. And this just means that that map, probably the base map, was updated in 1991. If we click over here, pretty much the same thing, and that's generally going to be the case. Most of the maps in a single area will have the same dates and information. In most all situations, you're going to want to go with the latest map, and if we searched around, sometimes what you'll also see is you'll have multiple maps from the same year, and some of those maps will have some different shading, different just a look to the map. So I'd say play around with those, see which ones you like the best. But you'll also notice here you can download this map in a couple of different ways. So you can download a JPEG or a TIFF, which is basically an image file. So you could look at it in an image viewer, Photoshop, Microsoft Paint, whatever that may be, and you'll just have an image file. You've also got a PDF. Now, the PDF comes in real handy, and I'm going to pull one of those up here in just a minute and show you. And we'll talk a little bit about topo maps and what you can find there. But this is the one that we will, in future videos, we'll use a lot. This is a KMZ, and if you remember from our Cal Topo video, we talked a lot about KMZ and KML files and how you can export and import those into other tools. And I'm going to be showing you some pretty cool things with this KMZ file and some of the other resources that you can use. So stay tuned for that. It's coming soon. But if you downloaded a PDF of one of these maps, what you're going to have is you're going to have the ability to pull that up in a PDF viewer like Adobe Acrobat Reader. And again, all of these are free tools. So Acrobat Reader's free. The U.S. Geological Database is free. Again, nothing. If it's going to cost you any money, I will be sure to tell you. But this is a quadrangle map that I downloaded earlier. And some of this will look familiar. It's the same things we talked about on Cal Topo. But you've got your contour lines. You can see you've got bodies of water. You might have trails such as we have here. You've got a road. You might have a county line boundary, those kind of things, or wilderness. I'm sorry, that's a wilderness boundary. You might also see county line boundaries, those kind of things. If we scroll down here and get to the bottom of this map, there's a few things that I do want to touch on real briefly if you're looking at these maps. If I can stop my taskbar from coming up here. So first you've got the scale, which as we said was 1 in 24,000, and that is the smallest map that you can get from the U.S. Geological Survey. There are some ways you can get a little bit more. I think you can go down to 1 in 10,000. You see you've got your scale up under here. This would equal a mile, and then they've got kilometers and meters as well. The other big one, and this one doesn't show up, it's kind of small print, but the contour interval level is right here, and that's set to 40 foot. And what that means is each one of these lines you see represents a 40-foot change in elevation, whether up or down. So 40 foot up or 40 foot down. That's going to represent a line on this map. So just always be sure what you're looking at and glance at your map to see. Most of them are either 40 foot or 20 foot contour levels. But that's just something you want to glance at. You've got your quadrangle location. This will just give you an idea of where in the state this map is from. You've got your adjoining quadrangles down here. So the one in the center is the map that you're looking at, and then you'll see you've got 8 maps around this. And then over here on the side, it'll tell you what quadrangle each one of those are by number. So Fossil Hill is number 5. So if I wanted to download that map, now I can go back and search in the U.S. Geological Survey and find that map and download it by name. And then you've got a legend over here that tells you what all the different lines are: highways, light and secondary roads, trails, gates, all that good stuff. The last thing I'll touch on here before we move on is the declination indicator over here, where you've got magnetic north, true north. And this is important because if you're going to be using a compass in the field with this map, you'll want to make sure you set your compass to the right declination for this area. The only thing I'll warn you is this changes over time, so do not rely on what's on the map, because it can throw you off by a degree or more, and that's a lot after you stretch it out over the course of a mile or so. So always go out and find. There's several websites out there where you can search for declination by location, even down to the GPS coordinates, and it'll tell you exactly what the declination is, so you can set that on your compass ahead of time. So again, we're going to get into a little bit more detail around studying topo maps, but I just wanted to kind of give you an overlay of what you can get from the U.S. Geological Survey and what all this information down at the bottom means. So again, study that and just be watching for some of this information to come back in future videos. With that, I think that's about all I want to talk about here on the U.S. Geological Survey for now. So watch for this to come back. We will be going into how we can use this interactively with some of the other tools going forward. The next tool I'll talk about real briefly is HillMap.com. I used to use this one quite a bit, but I don't use it so much anymore because I found some better ways, in my opinion, to do this same thing. But basically what HillMap allows you to do is have a side-by-side view of different types of maps. So if I want to come in here and do a CalTopo, I can pull up CalTopo's database. Now, I want to warn you one thing here. This is in no way linked to your CalTopo account or your CalTopo map, so you won't see any markers that you've made or anything like that. And look at there, I just happened to pull into the Bighorn National Forest, which wasn't intended, but this is a general area I'm going to be hunting in a couple of weeks. But what you can see here is you can see a side-by-side view of what the terrain looks like from a topo perspective, and then what the aerial satellite view looks like. And there's other maps you can choose here, but the general idea is you can see an aerial photo view, and you can see the topo view from a side-by-side perspective, so that you know if you center this in the screen here, it's going to be the center of what you're looking at here. And again, personally, I think I found some better ways to do this, where you can actually look at the aerial view and see the the topographical contours and features kind of underneath the aerial, so it's like you're looking through the aerial photo to see the contour lines, and that's coming. So we'll cover that again in a future video. But this is a pretty cool tool, and it does come in handy, and there's some things you can do with setting waypoints, and you can print maps off of here, and you can even share information with others through this. So it's not a bad resource. Like I said, it's just not something I use as much today as I used to in the past. From there, we'll talk a little bit about the GPS file depot. And I mentioned in the first video that I did that I am a Garmin GPS user. I'm a big fan of Garmin as a product. I think they've got great customer service, and they've just been around a long time. And while there's other GPS products out there, I just feel Garmin does a better job when it comes to land navigation for hiking, backpacking, hunting, those kind of things. So I'm just a big Garmin fan. But Garmin includes some maps with their products, but they also sell some maps. But this resource here will allow you to actually go find maps for the area that you're wanting, and then download them. Most of them are for free, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But you can download those maps, and then you can import them into Garmin Basecamp, which is coming. We're going to talk about that tool, and as well into your GPS. So if your GPS came with 100K detail, which we just talked about the differences between 100K and 24K, and you're wanting 24K maps, then there's a good chance you might be able to find those maps through GPS File Depot. And real quickly, we can just go in and do a search by state. I'm going to do Georgia because that's where I am and it's what I'm familiar with. And now we see a list of various topo maps that you can either download or research. And you'll see here that we've got a bit of a legend over here. And the one thing that I want to show you and point you out is you've got a column for free. So if it does not have a check mark in it, that is a map that you would need to pay for. One that always jumps out at me here is this is actually a link to Onyx. So Onyx maps, which run generally around $100 per state. They're a great company. I highly recommend them. I own Onyx maps for 3 states, but and we may do a video on Onyx at some point, but right now I'm wanting to focus on the free tools, so that's just not one that plays into this. But if you go up here and look at Georgia Topo, and you click on this, you can kind of get a little bit more information about this. And I was thinking this actually showed that it was at 24K detail, but I don't see it here. But I do have this map downloaded and I actually use it. So, but you kind of get an idea of what the view looks like, and then you can download the map and install it. And this just downloads as a package. You double click it and it extracts some files, and then you can pull those into Garmin Basecamp, and then you can also export them out into your GPS. Not going to spend a ton of time here. We will use, when we get into the Garmin Basecamp, I'll actually walk through downloading one of these files and getting it into Garmin Basecamp and subsequently into the GPS. But for now, I just want to kind of give you a high-level idea of what it looks like and what it comes in handy for. There'll also be some trail maps if you're into hiking, those kind of things. And you'll notice here there's also a map of the entire southeast United States. So it pays just to poke around in here and look and see what's available, and determine what best fits your needs. And then you can, again, download those maps and view them in Garmin Basecamp or pull them into your GPS so that you can use them for navigation. The next couple that I'm really going to focus on here for just a couple of minutes are more general in nature, but I am showing you the Georgia examples. So the Georgia DNR does a really good job of actually providing an interactive map that includes boundaries for all public lands in the state of Georgia. I do know other states do this as well. So, if you're not in Georgia, just do some Google searches, see if you can find something like this for your state. I use this at this point really more as a validation, so it does get updated regularly. So if the Georgia DNR adds acreage to a tract, they will update this map first. So a lot of times I'll actually go, before season and double check any WMAs that I'm planning to hunt and compare it with my data to see if there have been any additions to a piece of public property that I might want to check out. So again, check these out for your state. Some states have them. So I know Georgia does, and I will include a link to this in the show notes as well, and to all of these tools in the video notes. But just check for your state and see if something like this exists. And lastly, Georgia also provides a KMZ file for public lands in the state of Georgia that you can download and then import into Google Earth. So I would recommend that you also do a search for your state or the state that you plan to hunt to see if they offer a KMZ file or KML file. They're pretty much interchangeable. So just do some Google searches for your state and public land boundaries, KML, KMZ file, those kind of things. And you should be able to find them fairly easily. And then once you have that file, you can actually import this into Google Earth. You can import it into CalTopo. So if you're looking at an area, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like real quick here in CalTopo. If I go over and look at, where's one I want to look at here? I think I've already done that here. Yeah, so this, and I think I did this in the CalTopo video, but this is a public land boundary that I downloaded from this link, imported it into Google Earth, and then found this boundary, exported just that little piece of that entire file out of Google Earth, and then pulled it into CalTopo. So now I've got a boundary for this track on this WMA. So Very useful if you can find them, and sometimes you have to get really creative in your Google searches to find them, but these are out there. I can also tell you that if you're looking at a Western hunt, there are KML and KMZ files available based on units. So if you're looking at a state like Wyoming, you can go in and do a search for mule deer units or elk units, and you can find these KML and KMZ files to download, and then you can pull those into CalTopo, Garmin Basecamp, Google Earth, those kind of things. So Google can be your friend. I would spend a good bit of time doing searches on these, and maybe download as many of you as you can, and we'll get into how you can use those files in a soon to come video on Google Earth. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you found all this information useful. Please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment or suggestion below for anything that you would add to these videos that might be useful for other people that are watching them, or for suggestions for future videos. Until next time, happy hunting, everyone. Thank you.